Hey friends, welcome back. Today I'm sharing with you an easy and delicious recipe. It is called cowboy butter chicken linguine. So super easy. You may already have some of these ingredients on hand. I already did in my pantry and in my refrigerator, so I was thrilled to be able to make this one for you today. And like I said, it's pretty easy, doesn't take too long to make. But you need about a pound of chicken breast that is chopped up into small pieces, bite-sized pieces. I have a little more than a pound, and that worked out fine for the recipe. So it's about 2 chicken breasts, I believe, that I had, but it calls for a pound. You need a half a cup of chicken broth, a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. You need the juice of 1 lemon. It calls for a teaspoon of pepper flakes. I'm using a little bit less. I don't want it to be too spicy, so add as much as you want or as little as you want. Then 3 cloves of garlic minced, a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan, and a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley chopped up, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. It calls for, I think it said 10 ounces maybe of linguine, that's a pound, and some salt and pepper to taste. But I'm using this Kinder's cowboy butter seasoning, and it already has, a lot of seasonings that I'm using in this. But if you don't have the cowboy butter, you can always just use the salt and pepper. But this has like the Dijon mustard and, the seasonings and everything in it. But this does add a lot of flavor. So if you can get this, I would definitely use it. Definitely one I like to keep on hand. And like I said, it goes well, with this dish because hence, cowboy butter. Now, the first thing that you're going to do is add your chicken to a hot pan with about a tablespoon or so of olive oil, and you want to brown your chicken until it's completely cooked. So you basically want to cook it through. And like I said, just go ahead and brown it up the best that you can. And it took me a little bit just to get it, to that brown color. It didn't quite get as, brown as I would have liked without it burning. But I'm going to add some of that cowboy butter seasoning to the chicken. And as I said, it does flavor this up really, really well. I think without it, I think it might have been a little bland, but definitely a good seasoning to have on hand. And you can add, if you have some of the seasonings that are in this, you can also add that as well and make your own cowboy butter. But I'm just going to season it up, and I'm going to cook this down until that is completely cooked through. And while that's cooking, you want to go ahead and start your linguine. And then take your chicken out once it's completely cooked and put it on a plate and just put it to the side. And my pan did get a little brown, but that's okay. I'm going to add some butter to this, and that's going to help loosen it up. And as the late Anne Burrell would say, brown food tastes good. So that's going to be flavor in this dish. So just continue to melt your butter and kind of scrape up any of those little brown bits that you have there. And then once you get all of that melted down, or at least, partly melted, then I'm going to go ahead and add in the garlic. You want to cook it for about a minute and just let that get fragrant. And then after about a minute, you'll add in the Dijon mustard and just stir that in and get that completely combined with all of that goodness there. And like I said, you just, want to kind of get it in there. Then add the pepper flakes, and you can add as much or as little as you'd like. And then just mix that in, add your lemon juice. That will also help deglaze the pan a little bit. Add in the chicken stock or chicken broth, and then just, mix that in well. And like I said, try to make sure you get all those little bits up. And then once you're done with that, you're going to start adding the cream, but you want to make sure that it comes to a simmer first, then add the cream and mix that in well. And you're going to cook this until it starts to thicken up. It may take about 2 to 3 minutes. It could take a little bit longer. Just, cook it until you start noticing that it gets to be a thickness. And then add in your chicken. So make sure your chicken was already cooked. It'll cook the rest of the way here, but I tried to make sure that, it was completely cooked when I took it out the first time. And then I'm just going to make sure that this is fully coated with that sauce. So you want to get every bit of that chicken coated, then add your linguine. And it's going to be a little thick because it had sat there for a little bit. So once you start adding it into the sauce, it starts to loosen up a little bit, and it'll be easier to mix in. So just continue to try to coat the pasta and the chicken. And I did not use all the pasta, that whole pound of pasta. I saved the rest for something else. I just didn't want to put too much. I wanted to make sure there was enough sauce to coat everything. So then I added in the grated Parmesan cheese. I added a little bit at a time, just, so that way it's a little bit easier to mix in and everything gets, fully, seasoned. So once you, have that mixed in, then you're going to add your parsley. And as I said, it's 1/4 cup. If you feel like that's too much, you can leave some of it out. I add some and then just kind of mix it in. And once it's done and I plated it up, this is what it looks like. Really, really delicious. So definitely a meal to make. We were very pleased with this one. And we just had some garlic bread on the side. If you want, you can have a vegetable. And as I said, this was absolutely delicious and so easy to make. Doesn't take very long. I think the most prep in it was the chicken. Just, cutting up your chicken. But overall, a pretty easy and fast meal to get on the table. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in seeing more like it, please click that subscribe button and the notification bell. That'll notify you when I post new videos. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and I thank y'all so much for watching. God bless y'all.